Tonight on CFTK-TV, 25 cats and 1 dog are saved from a terrace property. Claire Rattay calls out the Safe Supply program, and the BC government pulls out of its grocery rebate.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damon Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. Our first story of the day is about Skeena MLA Claire Rattay, who once again calling out the provincial government on the, quote, ineffectiveness of the BC Safe Supply program. And this time, the story is in the wake of leaked documents from the Health Ministry. Here's more from Jaylene Matthews of CFTK-TV.
Documents leaked last week from the Ministry of Health, but confirmed to be real by Health Minister Josie Osborne, detail that a significant portion of the opioids being freely prescribed by doctors and pharmacists are not being consumed by their intended recipients. Critic for mental health and addictions and Skeena MLA Claire Rattay says this is a problem.
The government doesn't seem to be willing to take responsibility for the fact that a lot of the safe supply has been diverted to criminals. It's been diverted to children. There's been a lot of issues around that, and the government has not really owned up for it, I should say, rather. And so I'm looking forward to when we're actually sitting to be able to try and hold them to account on that and get some answers.
Rattay is also calling for a change in the way overdose deaths are being reported.
The BC coroner's report had come out recently, and it showed that there was a bit of a decline in overdose deaths, which I was really happy to see. I assumed that it had something to do with the timing of how they tried that failed policy of decriminalization and then kind of walked it back. So I assumed that had something to do with it. And upon digging a little bit deeper, I found out that they have recategorized fatalities that are due to safe supply. So those aren't categorized as an unregulated drug death anymore. They're calculated as a prescription drug death, and that is not something that is publicly available information. So I'm trying to dig into that right now to figure out why those statistics were skewed in that way, just to see if that does have any bearing on the overall numbers.
CFTK-TV did reach out to MLA Amna Shah, Parliamentary Secretary for Mental Health and Addictions, for comment, but did not hear back before deadline.
In my opinion, if somebody's overdosing on safe supply or street supply, it shouldn't really matter. At the end of the day, drugs are drugs. I don't like the term toxic drug supply because all drugs are toxic. And so I don't think that there should be distinction between the two. I think regardless, that is an overdose death. So I would like to see that get investigated properly and make sure that those statistics are being reported accurately.
For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
And continuing with local news, the BC Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals recently responded to a heartbreaking case of animal neglect just outside of Terrace after the owner reached out to ask for help. And once again, here's Jaylene Matthews.
25 cats and a severely matted Labrador Retriever Poodle mix. That's how many animals were confiscated from a home east of Terrace. Eileen Drever, Senior Officer Protection for the BCSPCA, said the odor of feces and ammonia was overwhelming and that the home was not suitable for animals or people. The dog was heavily matted to the point of not being able to see or properly close his mouth, and many of the cats were underweight, one injured. Drever says the dog was distressed when he arrived at the animal center, but was immediately sedated and sent to the vet for an emergency groom. The mats caused hot spots and resulted in infection, and his toes were becoming deviated due to overgrown nails. The dog was also suffering from an ear infection and dental issues. Drever says staff noticed he went from not wanting to be touched to wanting to be wrapped in a blanket and held. Drever says 25 cats need to be spayed and neutered, along with many requiring other treatments as well. Drever says she's thankful the owner asked for help and recognized he could not give the animals what they needed. All of the animals are currently in quarantine with an unknown adoption timeline. For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
Now over to Prince Rupert, as the city has publicly reported that they have begun seeking consultation from Japanese Canadian residents so that they can use their advice on a new project. Due to funding being given to them by the Japanese Canadian Legacy Society, the city is set to install a memorial in Mariners Park to honor the Japanese Canadians that were removed from Prince Rupert by force and put into internment camps. The city is hosting an engagement event on February 26th at the Museum of Northern BC from 4 to 7 p.m. in order to make sure that they also properly recognize the pre- and post-war contributions of Japanese Canadians. The event space is apparently limited, so anyone looking to attend needs to RSVP the city by 4:30 p.m. on February 24th. Now we move our way down south, where many different organizations and jobs have gathered on the island to push back against overfishing in the Salish Sea. Brendan Strain from CTV News has more from down on in the island.
Stop the commercial herring fishery.
A gathering on the Sayout First Nation on the Saanich Peninsula is attempting to forge a brighter future for herring in the Salish Sea.
We must do everything that we can to protect our traditional food sources.
First Nations, environmental organizations, and politicians all collaborating on strategies to restore herring populations before it's too late.
Devastation.
That's what Ray Harris says has happened in the waters around his community, waters he has spent his entire life fishing.
Great amount of herring to absolutely nothing.
I'm furious.
Local MP Elizabeth May wasn't mincing words.
This is primarily the mismanagement by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans.
In November of last year, hereditary chiefs from 4 Saanich Peninsula First Nations called for the complete moratorium on the commercial herring fishery. That call is yet to be answered by the federal government. Today, this was a meeting to support that call and figure out next steps.
Herring are a critical component of the ecosystem.
This UVic professor says the importance of herring in the ocean can't be underestimated, as so many different species rely on the small fish as its primary food source, either directly or indirectly.
90% of the body of a Chinook has been shown to be comprised of molecules that have come from herring.
Those Chinook feed larger mammals higher up on the food chain.
And the Chinook population, in turn, essentially comprises 90% of the bodies of the resident orcas.
What we know for a fact is there's a direct correlation between access to traditional foods and health.
For the more than 200 people coming together here, the concern is that the West Coast herring population is at a near breaking point. And if the population is to recover, drastic steps need to be taken immediately by the government. Brendan Strain, CTV News, Central Saanich.
And down in Victoria, it was announced today that the minimum wage will see an increase of 2.6%, and this is done to primarily combat inflation. Originally $17.40, the wage will bump up to $17.85. The set date for this change to be implemented into the bank accounts will be on June 1st. Coming up next, we'll see what Canada's weather was like in the year of 2024. Welcome back to CFTK-TV. Well, it was another notable year for weather around the nation, with a variety of natural disasters that affected a number of different provinces. And British Columbia happened to not make the list when it comes to dollars paid from the bigger catastrophes. With more, we throw it to Pat Foran from CTV News.
2024 was not a good year for many residents of Canada who had their homes either damaged or destroyed by severe weather. Natural disasters left a trail of destruction and cost the insurance industry $8.5 billion in insured losses.
When claims pressures increase, there's pressures on premiums.
The Insurance Bureau of Canada says between 2001 and 2010, severe weather claims amounted to $780 million a year. Now it's about 10 times that.
So going from $780 million a year on average to a record-breaking year of $8.5 billion, that is a staggering increase in claims.
The largest severe weather events in 2024 included the Calgary hailstorm with payouts of $3 billion, Quebec flooding $2.7 billion, the Jasper wildfire $1.1 billion, and the Toronto GTA flash floods cost insurance companies $990 million. The huge payouts are also attributed to inflation, building costs, and labor shortages.
Cost of living, cost of labor, cost of parts, all of these things increasing also means increased cost of claims.
The amount insurance policies may increase will differ from company to company. If you're facing an increase to try and reduce your premiums, you can bundle home and auto, increase your deductible, install loss prevention devices such as a burglar alarm or backwater valve, ask about additional discounts if you're a non-smoker, have a good credit rating, or if you're mortgage-free, and most importantly, shop around.
If you're a consumer and you're getting a $500 increase in the mail, it might be time to start looking around for another company out there that hasn't been impacted the same way that your company has.
While you may find cheaper insurance elsewhere, make sure you compare policies carefully, as coverage options will differ and there could be limits if you need to make a claim. Pat Foran, CTV News.
And now we turn our attention to the local weather forecast for tonight and the week ahead. Tonight on the north coast, it should see partially cloudy conditions with winds coming from the east at 20 kilometers per hour, increasing to 40 at times. The low should be -3 with a wind chill of -9. Terrace and Kitimat should also be partially cloudy with winds from the north at 20 kilometers per hour, also increasing to 40 at times. There should be a low at -8 with a doubling wind chill of -17. The Bulkley Valley should be mostly clear as well with a low of -25. Onto your weekly weather forecast, the coast could see some rain or snow tomorrow with increasing temperatures as the week goes along, with a clear day on Monday as well. The rain should start to trickle back in full time starting on Tuesday, and the high will be 7 starting on Tuesday, and the low will be -1 on Sunday night. Terrace and Kitimat has a bit of everything this week with snow tomorrow, clouds on Sunday, sun on Monday, maybe some rain Tuesday, and then maybe some snow on Wednesday. The high will be 3 degrees on Tuesday and the low will be -8 on Sunday night. The Bulkley Valley will have some sun and chances of flurries this week with warmer temperatures starting on Sunday afternoon. The high will be -1 starting on Tuesday and the low will be -14 on Sunday evening. And now we take a look at your Northwest roadside report. For additional updates, make sure to check out drivebc.ca. Highway 16 has compact snow from Doreen to Whitsett and slippery sections throughout. Highway 37 has slippery sections from Terrace to Kitimat and compact snow between Kitwanga to the Yukon border. Highway 37A has compact snow. Highway 118 has slippery sections. The Nishka Highway has slippery sections, and Telegraph Creek Road has compact snow. And these are what the cameras were looking like from around the Northwest. Still to come, Point Roberts finds itself in an awkward position during the trade war. Hello again. Well, one place that has been in an awkward position is Point Roberts, Washington, which is a very small town just south of Delta, where the ongoing trade wars could create tumultuous times for this community. Here's Mark McMahon, who has more on what is going on down there.
You have to cross the border to get there, but then you'll encounter a grocery store where Canadian cash isn't considered funny money. Such are the oddities of the American exclave just south of Delta.
We're unique. We are unique in North America.
Unique indeed, and uniquely vulnerable to the ongoing trade tension between our country and the U.S.
I think the word uncertainty is key there. As you know, there were tariffs that were threatened and they've been postponed, but there's an air of uncertainty still there.
The scenic community relies on BC for water, power, even fire services. Concern over the situation is growing and has prompted a number of petitions, including a letter to Premier David Eby asking that any potential retaliation from the BC government exempt Point Roberts.
We're trying to get through to, the politicians and the leaders that there's a situation here. We can see it coming.
One Canadian politician who is listening is George Harvey. Delta's mayor once lived 3 doors away from the border.
We're trying to be as best of a neighbor as we can, and those people do need help. And I just hope that they don't get caught up in a situation where people are trying to boycott everything coming from the United States.
The chair of BC's Tariff Response Committee, Ravi Kahlon, tells CTV, quote, "While we see how things unfold, our planning continues to be ready for whatever may come," noting the previously announced measures focused on red states, so Washington state was not an initial target. Regardless, those in Point Roberts remain on edge, hoping the border feud doesn't escalate further. Martin McMahon, CTV News, Vancouver.
And the BC government has canceled the $1,000 grocery rebate due to, quote, ongoing warfare with President Trump's tariffs. This could be one of many local and provincial changes that Canada has to make if tariffs continue to happen. Once again, here's Robert Buffum.
Canada.
The specter of President Trump's threatened tariffs is being blamed by the NDP government for breaking a major election promise. Announcing in a pre-budget update, it's canceling the $1,000 grocery rebate.
These are unprecedented economic times. We could never imagine a situation where our closest neighbor has essentially declared economic warfare on Canada.
During the election campaign, David Eby said very clearly that people needed help now, not down the road, which is why he made that promise. It's also why we, as the Conservative Party, brought forward their plan around tax relief.
The finance minister also saying the financial chaos caused by Trump's multiple tariff threats has triggered a hiring freeze of all public service workers except for those needed to support core services. The union representing civil servants worries about a bloat at the top and a relative decline in frontline workers.
Senior management has increased at almost double the rate of frontline workers. And so today there's one senior manager for every 3 frontline workers represented by the union.
Meanwhile, on Thursday, Trump issued his latest volley, global reciprocal tariffs coming in April for any country imposing them on the U.S., and again pushing for Canada to become the 51st state, citing its lagging NATO contributions.
If they had to pay just something modestly fair, they wouldn't be able to succeed as a country, and that's why I feel they have to become a state.
If you want to talk about fentanyl that's killing people, yes, we're all in. If you want to talk about transnational crime, we're all in. But if you want us to become the 51st state, there's no way that's happening.
The BC legislature returns on Tuesday. Undoubtedly, responses to the tariffs will feature large in the legislative agenda.
It is the #1 priority facing our government right now.
The budget will be tabled March 4th, the same day a 30-day reprieve on 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods is set to expire.
And the average price for a home in BC was down slightly in January this year compared with the same time last year, while sales did increase. The BC Real Estate Association said that the average price dropped 1%, or just under $10,000 in total. Over 4,200 homes were sold in January, which is a 6.4% increase from last January, but still a 12% drop from the 10-year average. Association Chief Economist Brendan Augmundson said that it could be a stronger year for real estate, although that all depends on global uncertainty on how the Bank of Canada compensates. Now we turn our attention to the stock market, where we have a significant increase in the Canadian dollar today. The Canadian dollar is up about 0.4 of a penny. The price of gold is down $44.70. Oil is down 43 cents. Natural gas is up 10 cents. And aluminum is down $3. In Toronto, the TSX is down 215 points. The Venture Index is down 7.66. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 165.35. And NASDAQ is up 81.12. Still ahead, the celebration of African Canadian hockey history is set to hit 130 years. Welcome back to our final segment. Well, one lady had a unique situation appear when she was announced as deceased, leaving her in a living world of confusion on how her personal information could develop to that point. And here's Sarah Plowman of CTV News with more.
It took a month and a half for Kathy Adams to clue in she'd been deemed dead.
I mean, you have to laugh.
She felt fine, but her old age security and Canada Pension Plan payments stopped. She called Service Canada.
She said, I'm sorry, it's bad news, but on December 13th, it was noted that you were deceased. And then she was very sweet. She said, my condolences. And both of us laughed.
That person couldn't fix it, but flagged the issue as urgent. Adams made nearly 24 calls. She reached her member of parliament, called Service Canada back for more information, and went to the local office to prove she is alive. That's where she learned what happened.
A niece had called in and reported a death. She said, well, that's obviously been put on the wrong account.
While CTV News interviewed Adams, a high-level Service Canada employee called.
And I do want to, express my, apologies for sure in terms of the error. And I know that it definitely, has been inconvenient for you.
They confirmed no personal information was compromised. Adams saw similar stories online and thinks there should be a faster and easier way to correct the record.
They need to either be really careful about what they're entering on files, or have some protocols that it can be corrected very, very quickly.
Tonight, Adam's social insurance number is reactivated. She's once again receiving her CPP and old age security payments, but still has to call a call center to get her Service Canada account unlocked. Employment and Social Development Canada says what happened is exceptionally rare.
And the startup of the formerly Colored Hockey League will now be hitting its 130th anniversary in the Maritimes. There will be an exhibition game played on February 27th, which is when the first recorded CHL game was played back in 1895. Here's Paul Hollingsworth with our final story of the day.
The Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes began play in the Halifax area in 1895.
It concluded in around 1930.
The All-Black Hockey League grew quickly, featured teams sprinkled in cities and towns around the Maritimes, and now stands as a symbol for equality and advancement for African Canadians. This Saturday, the 130th anniversary of the CHL will be celebrated with a commemorative exhibition game on this ice surface.
We're celebrating the very first recorded game, which happened on February 27th, 1895, between the Halifax Eureka's and the Dartmouth Jubilees.
Bill Riley will also be honored. Riley was the first African Nova Scotian to reach the National Hockey League. His playing days long over, Riley looks back on what he calls his improbable journey to the NHL and his special place in hockey history.
For me, growing up and watching those famous arenas on TV, and then the fact that, hey, little old me from Amherst, Nova Scotia, is actually playing in these Hall of Fame arenas, that was very, very special to me.
According to former St. Mary's University star player Percy Paris, celebrating the legacy of the Colored Hockey League sends an inclusive message that the contributions of these trailblazing players will never be forgotten.
We are part of the fabric of this country. We've made contributions, and so to be recognized for those contributions is so rewarding.
The game itself will feature a mix of current elite-level hockey players playing alongside some former local hockey stars, all coming together to celebrate a meaningful chapter of hockey history in this country.
And that will be all for tonight's cast here on CFTK-TV. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great night.